This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to an Atlanta Football Party here on Locked On Sports Atlanta and also here on Locked On Falcons. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman, joined by Jarvis Davis. Locked On Sports Atlanta. Of course, I host Locked On Falcons, and today we're talking all about the Falcons' Friday night practice in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But first, I want to tell you guys that today's illustrious episode of Locked On Falcons and Locked On Sports Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the summer starts to wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to, but this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we want to thank each and every one of you that is everydayers of both of these podcasts. Of course, if you want to make this podcast, that podcast, your first listen, your first watch each and every day, and become an everydayer, all you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So we have Jarvis on hand live from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He said, hey, look, the third string, fourth string guys are in. Let's go on and let's talk about the guys that matter. And of course, the two guys that really matter the most is the big-time quarterback, the $180 million man, Kirk Cousins. And it sounds like, Jarvis, from your eyes, him and Drake London look like a match made in heaven in Friday night's practice at the Benz.
You know what? When you think about what Kirk Cousins brings to the table, it is, we understand what he is, right? He's a 4,000-yard passer. He was on a ridiculous pace last year before he got injured, tore his Achilles and everything. So, and I said one of the big questions for me coming into this season is not necessarily if he's going to be fully healthy, because, you know, given the recovery time and everything like that, we understand that he's going to be fully healthy. It's just a matter of going out there and actually executing and doing those things, and that's what you saw tonight, man. Like, it was at one point where I thought Kirk and was picking on AJ Terrell, because it was, you know, he caught him like a little end route. He caught it over the middle. You know, it was a really good catch by Drake. You know, it was good coverage. You know, it wasn't like that was that much separation. And he caught it over the middle, and then it came right back in his play, went deep. It was a perfect throw. Drake was able to get tap his toes on the sideline and fading out of bounds. That bad boy was right in the basket, man. So looking at that combination, I said 18 plus 5 is going to be a good one. Because when you think about, you know, the caliber of cornerback that AJ Terrell is, and you seeing those guys having that rapport, that's what you want to see. That's going to help Kirk, you know, be in a headspace where, like, hey, man, I know that I can do this. I know what it looks like on paper, but Kirk talked about it himself. He's like, man, I'm not into perception. I'm into, you know, reality. And reality is he has to have a good connection with Drake London in order for this team to have some success on offense this year.
Yeah, you say 18 plus 5, that equals 23. 23 is a number of the GOAT, you know, so it looks like it's a magic number in terms of that sort of working. But I think you're right, Jarvis, with those two guys and Kirk and you know, because Kirk's already let the cat out of the bag that they're not going to play in the preseason. So every one of these practice reps matter for Kirk and Drake in that starting offense, just because they probably are not going to be able to get too much action in the preseason games. Later in the episode, we'll talk about some of the things that we're looking forward to next week against Miami in the preseason game. But, you know, we're talking about Kirk Cousins. We're talking about Drake London. Let's talk about the other guy that everybody has their eye on. You and I joked the other day on the podcast that all eyes are going to be on him, especially next week when he gets on a real football field and faces off against a real defense. No offense to the Atlanta Falcons, but, you know, it's practice. Let's talk about Michael Penix Jr. How did he look on Friday night?
There were some things that I feel like seemed like he had a couple overthrows early on, but, you know, as they start moving the ball and getting into, like, they're doing some 2-minute drill stuff, you know, you start to see him kind of settle down and start making those throws that we've been seeing out at Flowery Branch. Because I think the rapport that he has with Rondale Moore makes a lot of sense, right? Because he's been working with Rondale Moore, been working with the second team. I know we're going to talk about the third wide receiver competition in just a little bit, but I think that you could tell that he's been working with Rondale Moore, because they seem to have had a really good connection on Friday. Because those guys, man, when you think about what Mike Penix brings to the table, he's a timing guy. And when you start to see maybe that wide receiver didn't get out of his break quite quick enough, and that's what he used to, because the ball is coming out. He's not going to hold on to it. So, like I said early on, you kind of got that feel that it was like that. But as the practice went along, you start to see what Michael Penix is here for, and that is that accuracy, elite processing, getting the ball out, putting the wide receiver's hands so those guys can go out there and make plays after the catch.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We're all anticipating what we're going to be able to see from Michael Penix when he gets into the games over the next couple of weeks. Probably getting a lot of the preseason snaps that Kirk Cousins and company won't. And we're talking about Kirk and that offense trying to fire on all cylinders with maybe out those game reps, but Penix will have an opportunity to sort of work his way through whatever issues he has to deal with. But I think it's good to hear that he's looking relatively sharp in these practices. But you talk about that connection with Rondale Moore. We've seen Ray McLoud get a lot of the snaps for that number 3 position battle. Do you feel like there was any movement in that battle between those two guys to be that sort of number 3 wide receiver after Drake London, after Darnell Mooney?
To be honest with you, like you said, Ray McLoud is the clear-cut guy, but I like what I saw from Rondale Moore this evening. So those are some of the things that I feel like he's going to have to continue to do, because I feel like Ray McLoud almost established himself. Like, hey, I'm in the leader. I'm the poll leader right now. If I can use a Raheem Morris term, he's the poll leader right now, and I think that he's going to have to continue to have that consistency if he's going to break that. But I think right now Ray McLoud is the clear-cut leader, and Rondale Moore is going to have to continue, because we had conversations about this on your show and on Atlanta Football Party as well about feeling that Rondale Moore. I felt like Rondale Moore was the guy that would probably step into that role right away. But when Ike Hilliard when he came in and spoke to the media, he was talking about how Ray McLoud is going to play wide receiver, and he's been a special teams guy, but he's coming here to play wide receiver. And then when coaches, they don't say a lot, but when you got to listen though when they're speaking, because he kind of gave us a hint into what he was thinking Ray McLoud was going to bring to the table, and we've seen that consistently through these 2 weeks of practice.
Yeah, obviously Ike Hilliard knows Ray McLoud for their shared days in Pittsburgh. But talking about Rondale Moore, you're talking about that connection with Michael Penix, right? And as you say, McCloud seems to have the leg up, the pole position at this point in time. But there's a lot of camp to go through. There's a lot of training preseason games to go through. And again, talking about if Michael Penix is getting a lot of those snaps, that's going to give a golden opportunity for someone like Rondale Moore to make some plays in some of those games, just because you're talking about that sort of built-in rapport. And so we'll see if he can kind of make up ground, kind of similar last year where we saw DeMarcco Hellams sort of working behind Micah Abernathy, and then he made some plays in some preseason games to move up. He made a play tonight apparently in the practice, and we'll talk about that, as well as, we've been talking all about offense here. Jarvis don't care about no stinking offense. He wants to talk about that trench play.
It's all about the D, baby.
We'll get into sort of what movement we have on the defensive line as we continue today's Locked On Falcons, Locked On Sports Atlanta Football Party. Passion, drive, patience. It is the formula for winning championships, and it's also what's going to keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether you're in the Benz or hanging out at practice. If you're looking for superchargers like Drake London, roof racks, exhaust kits, whatever you're looking for, speed, power, style like the Falcons offense, eBay Motors has got you covered for your number one ride or die. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. So we're here with Jarvis Davis, myself, Aaron Freeman, host of Locked On Falcons, here on a Atlanta football party here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We just gave you guys the lowdown on the Falcons offense and how sharp they looked in practice. Jarvis, give us the lowdown on this defensive line depth. I know Raheem Morris spoke before practice talking about how deep they are at that D-line, and that's by design. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what Morris had to say and what you saw in practice today?
That's the thing that when you think about, everybody clamoring for one guy, get this guy in the first round. I know I raised my hand. For those watching on YouTube, I am raising my hand right now physically because go get this guy, get the guy. But when you actually look at it, you think about how we talked about on your show as far as like establishing himself in that run game and having some disruptors up front and the interior to be able to hold it down from a run game standpoint, and then kind of morphing into finding one or two guys or maybe even three guys that can get home on that edge on third and long. But it's he said, Raheem even said that he had a vision as to what that could look like, through that transition period. And of course he didn't tell me because, I'm like, hey man, give us a little insight, man. But you know how coaches are. But I do feel that his vision is to have these guys fight, slam, scratch, scrape for as many reps as they possibly can get on pass down situations, man. And I feel, I actually like it because that breeds competition, man. When you have that many guys and potentially maybe 8 or 9 defensive linemen you're going to carry on this roster, because they don't care about positions. They take the position. Coach even said it. They take the positions out, and Terry Fontenot as well. They said they take the positions out. They just put the guys' names up there. Okay, who do we need to keep? And when you think about it from that standpoint, you kind of understand, like, okay, these guys are trying to breed competition, have these guys battle it out, and whoever is the guy that's the most productive, that's who's going to get to play more, regardless of draft position or how long you've been on this team. And I love it when you talk about the competition like that.
Now, was there anybody in particular that popped to you watching practice? I know a player that has not necessarily gotten as much attention as maybe some other guys on that defensive line front in Demone Harris, player that the Falcons brought in like middle of camp last year, made some plays in a couple of preseason games and was on the practice squad for most of last year. Is he a guy that's making strides, that's making a push to maybe potentially make the roster?
Yeah, man, I think so, because when you think about from the edge standpoint, that's the position you need to be playing if you're on this team and you're trying to squeeze in another extra spot, because we understand with what's going on with the special teams and all of that, that situation with the kickoff and kickoff return, like that could be a way a guy like Demone Harris can get in, because when you think about those players being in such close proximity, more than likely, we saw even last night in the preseason opener in the Hall of Fame game, you saw some more bigger guys out there because they're in such close proximity. You got to be able to get your hands on those guys and lock in, or you're gonna be able to move your feet so you can get in front of those guys. So I'll be interested to see how they kind of work that in. But I think Demone Harris is a guy that can really get into himself into position to be able to make this squad with a versus looking at in years past, like he might not have, because of the mindset and how the structure was with Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot at the helm. But one more guy, man, I gotta talk about. I gotta throw him out there, man. Dude, DeMarcco Hellams. I told you that's my favorite to win that starting spot. I know it's going to be hard. He's going to have to continue to be consistent. But, man, he caught Ray McLoud over the middle so bad, to the point where Drake London tried to come up and, like, hey, man, that's your teammate right there. Or, he probably said something else, something I can't say on this show right now. but it's not FCC regulated, or whatever. But I think Hellams is the guy that I like, man. Kind of throwback type safety, and he proved that tonight, man. He made Michael Penix pump fake one time by throwing that ball over the middle, dude. He was like, "Hey, man, I got to do what I got to do. I'm competing for a spot, man. I got to put my shoulder pads." And he didn't even run through him. That's what made it even worse. He just kind of ducked it here, put his pads on him. And dude, that man dropped the ball and everything, man. That man gave up everything. So, but yeah, he's another guy that really popped tonight. And Hellams is a guy that I got a chance to talk to when he first came in as a rookie, and when you see him and not necessarily sure about a lot of stuff and what's going on to now be having that confidence, being able to say, "Man, I'm here to establish myself. I know we're teammates, but if you come across that middle, you're gonna catch something."
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, like he was a player that kind of was working with the third string at the beginning of last year's summer and worked his way up into the second string because he was able to make plays in games. And we may see something like that this summer, right? Where Richie Grant has kind of been the front runner at that safety spot. It hasn't been as much of a competition, I think, up to this point as a lot of people thought it would be. But as we say, DeMarcco Hellams a gamer, right? You put him in the stadium and all of a sudden, he starts making plays. And so it'll be interesting to see.
Different.
It'll be interesting to see how that develops over the next couple of weeks with some upcoming preseason games and more opportunities for him to make plays. But speaking of some upcoming preseason games, of course, the Falcons are traveling to Miami next week to face off against the Dolphins. But, they have a couple of days of joint practices that are going to be important to sort of set the table for that preseason game during the weekend. And Jarvis and I will wrap up today's Atlanta football party talking about some of the things that we're looking forward to next week in Miami. Guys, it is the summertime, and while the sports aren't sporting like they want them to usually during the summer, we're getting to that time in the calendar where things are starting to pick up. Baseball's still going strong. You got the Olympics. We got upcoming preseason games. You want to put some action on a Falcons preseason game? Well, you can do that over at FanDuel, and they are hooking up all their customers with a daily boost or bonus. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. All you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com, and you can make the most out of your summer. And whether you're into the upcoming Falcons preseason games, you want to bet on the Olympics, Major League Baseball, you got the upcoming NFL, and NBA, NHL season, it's all coming to you available at FanDuel. So head on over to FanDuel.com right now. See where you want to put your action, put your money where your mouth is at FanDuel.com, and make the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So, Jarvis, we're a couple of days away from the Falcons taking, their talents down to Miami, right? Much like a certain LeBron James, the other GOAT, I guess you could say. He did a couple of years ago. I guess
there's more than one.
Yeah, 15 years ago or whatever it is. It's been a while. But the Falcons will be taking their talents down to Miami if the heat in Georgia doesn't kill you, then the heat in Miami might wind up killing you with some of that humidity. But Jarvis, what are some of the things that you're looking to see from this team when they get into these joint practices? We saw them do this last year with Miami. We saw Tyreek Hill do his thing, as Tyreek Hill is so want to do. I do not want to be the cornerback that has to cover Tyreek Hill in a practice. Like, this is not cool. Like, just let him do his thing. Like, just, hey, get that guy out of here. Like, we don't need to see what he can do.
Jalen Waddell passing out work too to Jalen.
So, we don't want to see Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle doing their thing next week in Miami. That's one thing that we both can agree on. But what are some other things that you are looking forward to from this team next week in Miami?
To be honest with you, man, the cool thing about these joint practices is I think that the players are, if you were to poll all of them, there are some things that there are some things that you have to try and take a look at when you're playing against other people. You don't necessarily have all the tendencies, right? And this is like mostly an unscouted, when you're going through these practices as well. So it's really basically reacting, to somebody that's throwing something at you. And that's when you got to be at your best, right? Because that's going to happen in the game where, oh, we didn't see this on film. What are we going to do? So, and especially from a quarterback standpoint, wide receivers, and Zach Robinson, he's going to be going against another defense, a different scheme, and that's going to be, you're going to see how he's going to react in practice and everything like that. And of course, not only that, but the trenches, man, the one-on-ones, that's going to be the golden goose right there. That's what people are going to be paying attention to, and that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, because I want to see, what Caleb McGarry is going to do in pass pro down there against those boys in Miami. And obviously, guys like the young pups, Rupert Roro, he was a guy that I got a chance to see him, check him out. He looked good in 11 on 11. Got to see him he had a nice rep there. So if those young pups continue to go down there and shine, man, that's exactly what I'm going to be looking for. And of course, I would love to see what this secondary does against Miami, because that's going to be a really interesting to watch, because we understand the one question that we have on the other half of that secondary, as far as what Mike Hughes is holding it down at that corner spot right now. Richie Grant, like you mentioned earlier, is starting safety right now. So I'll be interested to see if a guy like Clark Phillips or DeMarcco Hellams can start making that case in game one. So that'll be interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right with the joint practices. You're not necessarily preparing, but I think you're right where, it's a lot about physicality. It's about athleticism. You don't know exactly what the other team is going to be doing, but the thing that you don't have to necessarily prepare for is effort, how toughness, and all the sort of things that you want to show. And, that often leads to, tempers flaring. I guess, Jarvis, we got to figure out if FanDuel has some odds on the over-under for how many scuffles there will be. Maybe we'll set it like 3.5. We'll probably have D-Led out there officiating it.
Yes,
and scoring it. He
will be polling immediately afterwards.
But yeah, I think that's going to be the big challenge for the Falcons. It's just matching the intensity and the physicality, whatever Miami brings, taking it to that same level and taking it beyond. And I think that will be really a big test for those guys. Is there, besides Michael Penix, is there any other players that you're going to have your eyes on, when we get to the actual game later in the week against Miami?
Wow, man. I want to see what Carlos Washington does, because that dude runs hard, man. Because, they're full speed, but they ain't full speed. So I feel like the running backs, we're going to get a chance to get, a good view of what they look like, as far as, because I know Carlos Washington has looked like he's been running hard. I want to see if that translates to broken tackles and getting 2 or 3 more yards after breaking that tackle and getting downfield, or maybe even pop one for 30 or 40 yards down the field. So I want to see if that translates, because he's definitely been practicing that way. So, and he just looks, he's one of those backs that just been looking really good out there, and that's going to be the interesting thing to watch, like putting guys on the ground, because they haven't been doing that in practice. So now they're going to get a chance to really run through that and finish that play, whether it be offensive lineman. And man, I saw Jake Matthews out here put somebody on his back, man. He put Braylon Trice on his back out here, man. It was on a run play. Oh my God, he sealed the edge so quickly. Caleb McGarry too. He put somebody on his behind. So yeah, man. With Matt Bergeron out here, Donkey Kong and folks out at practice. You got Jake Matthews pancaking folks, man, and then you got Caleb McGarry out here rolling folks up out here at practice, man. Oh, I want to see this offensive line, man, start to really establish themselves. Like, yeah, we stand up. They're disrespectful out here, man. You see, I almost jumped up.
Well, Jarvis, you're talking about the running backs.
Right.
I'm looking forward to the guys that are be tackling the running backs in the upcoming game, the linebackers, right? Where going up against Miami, they have a lot of speed on that offense. This is the opportunity for your boy Troy Anderson to showcase some of that speed that can match up maybe a little bit with those Dolphins, skill position players, especially at the running back position.
Check this out, Aaron. Check this out. You'll be proud of me. I asked Raheem Morris about Troy Anderson as far as what his role is going to be coming into this season. And he said something that I thought was very interesting. He said, Troy Anderson is a starting linebacker in this league. He said, it's just unfortunate that we have 3 of them.
Okay.
So, and he said that Troy is willing to do whatever they ask him to do, whether it be special teams or what have you. But he said he is a starting linebacker. So, you know what that means for me. I want to see it. I want to see it. But you'll be proud of me, man. I was asking a serious question about Troy, man. I want to know, man. Choir minds want to know about Troy Anderson.
Absolutely. So we will see what Troy Anderson is bringing to the table next Friday when the Falcons face off against the Miami Dolphins, as well as so many other players that Jarvis had an opportunity to see. Sound off in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. If you were out there on Friday for practice, some of the highlights that you saw, so maybe some of the lowlights, some of the things that you are looking forward to next week in joint practices, as well as that preseason opener in Miami. That is going to wrap it up for myself, Jarvis Davis, here on the Atlanta Football Party, a simulcast here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, Locked On Falcons. Of course, we thank each and every one of you that makes us your first listen. Continue to do so by subscribing or following for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, check out the Locked On Sports Today, Locked On NFL Scouting, Locked On Sports Atlanta family of podcasts, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.